Hello and welcome to the Anfield Wrap, hosted this week by me, Rob Gutmann, the Anfield Wrap's resident transfer weirdo. Subscribers will know that I regularly host an award-winning transfer show called The Transfer Gutter on our subscription service, Tour Player, and I don't normally get loose on this show. It's normally hosted by the lovely Neil Atkinson, who's sat to my left.
Hello.
Hi there, Neil. Beth Lindop is sat to my right.
Hi,
and
Rob.
Hi, Beth. And Ian Ryan is looking concerned also to my right as to what is about to unfold. Well, anyway, what's happened is the lunatics have taken over the asylum this week. We're going to talk in pure transfer filth from start to finish. In part one, I think we'll have a go at talking about Florian Wirtz, the incoming of Florian Wirtz, the imminence of his arrival and how we're all going to celebrate it, how he's going to change our lives, and actually how much Liverpool are going to pay him seems to be a thing now on social media, and I want to talk about it endlessly. In part two, I want to talk about the uncertainty surrounding Luis Diaz's life and situation and Liverpool's ongoing quest for a number 9, and there'll be other bits and pieces around it. Before that, I just want to say that the show, the Anfield Wrap, is brought to you, well, it's not brought to you, we partner with the charity Open Door, and we have done through the end phase of the season. Open Door in the heart of the community are an innovative, an innovative charity representative of the community in both Birkenhead and the whole city region. If you want to support them, either text TRANSFORM, that's all uppercase, that word, to 70480 to donate £10, or go to www.opendoorcharity.com/donate/. Okay, that's that bit done. That's the admin done, Beth. So, Wirtz, we're hearing that Friday could again be Florian Friday. Another of the many Florians in our lives at the moment, Pettenberg, a journalist for Bild in Germany, suggests that we will be launching him from a rocket, announcing him formally and doing all kinds of cute things on the club media on Friday. We believe it's Friday. You better get a wriggle on with this medical, and I will remain in a state of hyper anxiety until this medical's complete. I will never forget what happened in Fekir Friday, where he didn't pass his medical. But let's not even go there. It's been an interesting phase. The build up to Fekir Friday, people have started drilling into the granular details of his contract, and a couple of journalists have said this week that it looks like his wage is something like £243,000 a week, including bonuses, or £194,000 a week, not including bonuses. I think that's surprised most commentators. Does it surprise top journalists like yourself, Beth? Because we all thought more in my world.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's quite hard to get a read on those figures because the bonuses are, some of them are really achievable, and therefore, even though it's listed as a bonus, it's something that most weeks is probably he's going to be getting. So, yeah, I think we were just sort of discussing before we started recording. Obviously, at Leverkusen, he's probably on, significantly less than that based on the time that he signs his contract there, and the fact that they aren't, a financial superpower in the same way that Liverpool are, that the Bayern Munich are. So even if he were to be on, 194,000 without bonuses, that would be some jump. But I think he probably is going to be primed to be the top earner at Liverpool after Salah and Van Dijk. When they leave, I think, there is probably a plan in place where he there's maybe an incremental rise, or with bonuses he becomes Liverpool's highest earner. But yeah, it's very difficult. I think we'll probably be seeing a few different things over the next few weeks about his wages. But I think the positive thing, the exciting thing from a Liverpool perspective is that anyone who talks about him, anyone that you talk to in Germany about him, says that any money that you're paying for Florian Wirtz, regardless of whether it be the transfer fee or the wages, is probably going to be worth it.
Yes, sorry, my phone's just gone off. That was really handy. Should have put it into airplane mode. Sorry, Beth, about that. Neil, I know you've got opinions on this. I think we'd all assumed he'd be getting something nearer the Salah Van Dijk money, and that we could more than justify that because he's an exceptional market opportunity, to use the vernacular of modern times. He is a player you can justify playing the top end of wages. You don't have to be overly concerned with a knock-on effect on squad morale as much as you might ordinarily be. Is that fair?
Yeah, I suspect I am, without sort of undoing anyone's integrity, I'm I just don't really accept these figures, knowing how Liverpool pay and the way Liverpool go about the business. We get to see what Liverpool pay out in wages every single year when the accounts come round, and Liverpool are exceptionally high payers in terms of the whole of the context of European football, and also in terms of the context of English football. Second, I think last season only to Manchester City. Last season's published figures 23-24 at about 377 million. You can begin to sort of drill into this in a number of different ways. One is to sort of point out, well, obviously an aspect of that will be going on national insurance contributions without being unbelievably boring about it, but they'll end up being quite hefty in there, and other bits and pieces as well. And Liverpool, that 377 million doesn't just sort of include the playing staff, but it also includes the non-playing staff. So if you just take that figure, halve it, and then divide it by 25, i.e. Liverpool will have 25 first-team players, you get to 7.5. So if you take the 377, halve it, you get 188 million, and then you divide it by 25, you get 7.5 million. I cannot sort of reckon with Liverpool.
150 grand a week?
It's about 150 grand a week,
yeah.
Very good. And I can't quite reckon with the idea that Liverpool are paying that figure to Wirtz that's been published if the average across the 25-person squad, with the absolute back of a beer maths that I've just done there, has a really generous, by the way, because Liverpool are probably paying out more than half of the 377 million after national insurance and after all other things to the players, that's where it ends up. So I find that difficult. I also don't really accept it in the context of Liverpool's bonus structure. So there was a piece in the Mirror in April 2018 I always go back to about Roberto Firmino. So Firmino scored against Southampton. And so Firmino's basic, according to a Football League's website thing, and the Mirror published this, and they used the word allegedly a couple of times, so let's use the word allegedly as well. But the Mirror published it, and I've never seen it knocked down. I had Firmino on 68 grand a week. He signed a new contract, Firmino, in April 2018, so this is his initial Liverpool contract that he signed in 2015, so he's on 68 grand a week. But his bonus structure, as published then in the Mirror, was 25 grand a goal for his first five, each of his first five, 45 grand a goal for 6 to 10, 65 grand a goal for 11 to 15, and 85 grand a goal for 15 plus. And that day, I think he scored his 15th goal of the season. He was also on 30k in assist. So that week, he pulls in £184,000 for me, according to this Mirror article that they've taken from Football Leaks. Now, that's in April 2018. So unless we're saying that Liverpool have calmed down on the bonuses, which it's possible that Liverpool have chosen to do, I also sort of struggle with, and if the individual and team performances are met, it's that much, because the team performances presumably includes A, qualifying for the Champions League, which they'd expect to do, B, winning a cup, C, possibly finishing top two or with a points level.
There'd be appearance bonuses as simple.
Well, but they're the individual targets. What I mean is there's also then team performance targets, and then going on and winning, if they win major honours. I just really struggle to sort of believe it. I can well believe that Liverpool will want wiggle room in the Wirtz contract so that they can give him another contract 2 or 3 years down the line, as they've done with so many of the other top performers, that then moves them up. I can also believe he is not paid in the same class as Salah and probably Van Dijk. I think that's absolutely fine. I just think that on football wages, as I say, Liverpool are bouncing around paying out £377 million a year. It is Liverpool's number one cost by a mile, year in, year out. And Liverpool will say, and go to the ends of the earth to say, all the money ends up on the pitch. That's what Liverpool are all about. All the money we make, it all ends up on the pitch. And I take them at face value on that. So I struggle to sort of take this at face value. Ultimately, does it matter in the grand scheme of things? Well, it matters only if Liverpool are paying out a massive wage bill and they're not getting the results. But in 23-24, I think you can argue they paid out a massive wage bill and got themselves back into the Champions League and laid the groundwork for the following season. Last season, they win the league. So has everyone been worth the money? 100%. The only point at which it becomes an issue is if it threatens the future of the club. I don't think we ever believe it will do that, or if we feel under this ownership, or if we believe that, as I say, that you're putting the money out and you're not getting the return. So in the grand scheme, it doesn't matter overly. I'm just a sceptic on a lot of wage figures, full stop. And this all goes all the way back to, for instance, Salah's agent, who said in the context of the Harvard case study, I think you'll find Mo's on closer to $1 million a week than he is to the published figure that was put out, bonuses, image rights stuff and things like that. So I think all of this, I think everything's got to be taken with a pinch of salt is sort of where I end up. And it's worth pointing out that in the context of the whole of European football, Liverpool are amongst the very, very, very top payers.
Well, this is what it's all about for me, and it's about this making a statement in the market. punching our weight. I mean, the transfer fee is the signifier here. It's looking like it's add-ons notwithstanding, going to be a British transfer record, certainly a Liverpool transfer record. It'll be the richest deal in Europe this summer, I'd expect. You'd expect it to be accompanied by a wage figure befitting of a player who can command a £125 million transfer fee. I think if we're going to take the logical leap that Liverpool are now prepared to entertain transfer fees in excess of £115 million, they are also prepared to absorb that they will pay the elite level wage that's required to secure those kind of deals.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think what everyone said, I wouldn't massively disagree with any of it, to be honest. If you'd have asked me before he joined what he would get, I would have said it would start with a 2, to be honest. I think 194 you've got up there.
In terms of the package worth, the realistic package worth?
I would have thought he'd be on something north of 200 grand, would have been my guess. Maybe around about 250 if you'd have asked me to kind of, pin it down to a figure. I said before we came on air, Liverpool will absolutely want to give themselves wriggle room, and it might be that they want to give him another contract in 2 years' time. So
100%.
They won't want to be going, I don't think, anywhere near north of 300 straight off the bat. I mean, Beth alluded to it before. I don't know what he was getting paid at Leverkusen, but it won't be anywhere near what he's getting now. So I think there'll be that thing with him where he knows he's getting weighed in massively. And listen, could he have got more elsewhere? Possibly. If he'd gone to Manchester City, I would say almost certainly he'd get more money there, potentially, even though Liverpool are top payers. But I think from what we've heard about this guy, there's more to him than just going somewhere where he's going to make the most cash. I think he's very, very interested in the project and putting himself on a bit of a platform, what he can win, working with this manager, working with these players. So, listen, maybe the figures are slightly under, but I don't think to be a million miles away, Rob, if I'm honest. And as I say, if he comes in and hits the ground running, and we all expect him to, then probably in 18 months, 2 years' time, Liverpool are looking to get him around the table again and saying, right, where do we go from here? Sign your next one.
Figures don't include generous pension contribution.
Absolutely. But you know what? The whole thing around wages, I think is interesting. And I know you've got it on your agenda later. But one of the reasons why I felt, for instance, Andy Robbo might go, and I said it on, transfer committee games that we all play, and I know that's a little bit of fun, but I made the point in that I think about a serious offer or a decent offer came in for Robertson, despite all of the other things that he brings around, the culture and all that kind of stuff. It was fairly obvious that his performances had dropped off a little bit. But Robertson's been one of the top players at Liverpool. He's on reportedly about 160 grand a week. He signed a deal in 2019, then got another deal in 2021 when he was probably the best left back in the country and one of the best in Europe. So if you're Liverpool, thinking about it from a strategic point of view, I think if you sat Edwards and Richard Hughes in a room and said, are we okay paying our backup left back £8 million a year, they'd probably have thoughts on it. And their thoughts might be, we'd rather not, to be honest, if we can help it. Now, I don't think anyone's strong-arming Robertson out the door because, listen, legend gets bandied around a little bit too easily in modern-day football. But if he does leave the club, he leaves with that tag. Make no mistake about it. He is a bona fide Liverpool legend. But that's a lot of money to pay a backup left-back, if that's what he's going to be. And I think if we all think Kerkis is going to come in, and listen, all the noises from his camp, and there's a lot of them, is that he's coming in pretty soon. He is going to be the first choice, as long as nothing goes wrong. And listen, we've seen fullbacks come in before and take a little bit of time. Robertson himself plays more for Scotland in the first 4 or 5 months than he does Liverpool when he joins the club. But Kerkis has got 2 years of Premier League football behind him now, and I think he comes in and they're expecting him to hit the ground running. Might not work out that way, but that's what they're expecting. So to suddenly pay your backup guy £8 million a year, they might be thinking, we could probably spend that elsewhere, maybe a younger lad, maybe someone who can cover multiple positions. So a lot of moving parts when it comes to wages, and the powers that be, Richard Hughes, Michael Edwards, they'll be thinking about all of this.
Well, Ian's nicely segued me into Kerkez and left-back chat there. We've gone Florian's wages to Kerkez. Well, I don't want to speculate on Kerkez's wages, Beth, but the left-back situation is becoming more interesting, I think, in a broader sense than we all anticipated because of the reasons Ian's just outlined there. We didn't expect Andy Robertson necessarily to be moving on this summer. He may not move on this summer. He's got a lot to think about, but in the absence of a new contract offer, you can see the appeal for him and his family really to go, someone's going to give us 3 years and LFC are giving us no more than the one remaining year. We have to take this seriously, especially if it's a prestigious club as reported. It might be like Atletico Madrid. But for Liverpool, it gives us a bit more of a headache than I think we'd have liked in that position. It increases the amount of churn we'd have to do, and not just churn in terms of just another body. It's one of the leadership group, right? Okay, so he's not a guy who might have started the season, but he's an important cultural architect, to use the modern expression, within the squad. To lose him and have to find another, well, effectively a backup left back is a bit of a challenge. To find one economically and one who will accept the role is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I think it has thrown a bit of a spanner in the works. I think coming into this summer, it was almost a bit of a foregone conclusion that Tsimikas would move on. We know there's interest from clubs toward the bottom end of the Premier League. Leeds United are one of the clubs that have been tipped to be in for him. But, you know, if Robertson were to move on, does that change the outlook on Tsimikas? Because, you know, I think there's the consensus that, you know, he's not good enough to be the first choice. But if you are then looking for a second choice left back, I can't think of many second choice left back options better than Kostas Tsimikas, and so then obviously that would come down to the player and whether he wants to move on himself, which you would think he probably would, but he's been fairly content for the past 5 years. So yeah, the Robertson situation is an interesting one. You could certainly see the appeal for him if the interest from Atletico does become more concrete. You know, it's an opportunity to go be a starter, to live down the road from his best mate in Trent Alexander-Arnold, and you know, a bit of sunshine and all of the things that we said for Trent as sort of mitigating circumstances for why he might want to go, apply obviously in this case as well. And you know, it must be really hard for Robertson. I thought that at times last season, and we saw it a little bit with Jordan Henderson, didn't we, in the summer that he decides to leave. I think he found it very, very difficult, Henderson, to reconcile with the fact that he was no longer going to be one of the mainstays of the team. And I think Robertson, as much as I think if he does stay, and I would like him to stay, I think he will still play a significant role both on and off the pitch. It's not going to be what it was 2-3 seasons ago. He will be playing, unless Kerkez comes in and doesn't do very well, or Robertson uses that as an impetus to really kick on, then he's not going to be playing as often as he would like. And I think for some players, that can be really, really difficult. And I think Robertson he's a guy who wears his heart on his sleeve and is emotional, and you know, that's what so many Liverpool fans love about him. And I think he might find that a little bit tricky. So if there is the option and the opportunity to go elsewhere, you know, maybe it is something that he will mull over. But it does leave Liverpool with a bit of a conundrum, because Kerkez, yes, he's got Premier League experience. He should sort of hit the ground running, you would hope. But he's still only 21. You know, if he gets an injury, then who do you turn to? So, yeah, I think Liverpool would prefer for Robertson to stay put this summer. But obviously depends on the finances involved and how keen the player is to want to move abroad.
I think something's changed, Rob, because I think, you know, going into the kind of the back end of the season, everyone's saying, no, we've got a new left back, probably Kerkez, and then you back it up with Andy Robbo. And I can understand that assumption, because we all make assumptions, and I can get on board with it to an extent, because, you know, he's probably still got something to offer. I do certainly believe that. But I don't think he should be starting week in, week out. I think that's where me and him would differ. I think he still believes he should be starting. But it does get a bit tricky, because he was saying towards the back end of the season, he was talking very much about he still believes that he's capable of playing for a top team week in, week out. So it's all very well us saying, well, he'll be the backup, but if he doesn't want to be a backup, I think it's, Beth alluded to it there, it's hard for these players who've been absolute winners, and that's what he's been for 8 years, to suddenly find himself, you know, just backing up someone else. You know, Jürgen used to always say about Milner and Henderson that they were unbelievable leaders and they were great around the place, but when they weren't playing, they could still be a pain in the arse, because they've been used to playing, and they at the time probably still believe they should be the number one in their position. And I think some of the language Robbo's used would kind of almost back that up. You know, we spoke to Carragher, I think at a charity event not that long ago, and he was saying that he still believed he had under 2 or 3 years at the very top level, playing week in, week out. And he also said at that time, I hope the fans make as much noise about my contract situation as they do about Virgil and Mo's. Now, there's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek in that, I'm sure, but there's probably also a bit of a serious element to it as well. And I think, and again, making assumptions, I wouldn't be surprised if the conversations have now happened where maybe the manager's been really honest with him and said, listen, you've been brilliant, but we are going to go in a slightly different direction. Are you comfortable with that? And him being the kind of the winner he is and the winner he has been, he's probably thought, well, I'm not sure. I can probably still go and play another 2 years somewhere else. And when a club comes in like Atletico Madrid, where they are going to give you a chance to still compete for big honours, I can see why he is suddenly thinking something else. And obviously, the reasons I mentioned before about Liverpool are still paying him top money, could they go out there into the market and do something else? I'm not totally surprised that this is where potentially we're landing.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Neil. The club feel like they are perhaps moving on from Andy much more comprehensively than we might have imagined. I didn't expect him to get a long contract renewal, but I wondered if they might offer him a year or two extra to sort of say, well, back yourself then, Andy. If you're going to be if you want to be number one, you can find your level again. That's on you. But if you're not, you'll be number two. But I worry now not worry, but I'm interested that they've moved in the direction of this fullback in Milos Kerkez, who we don't know exactly his level because he's played for Bournemouth and he hasn't played it in the pressure cooker environment of playing for a team like Liverpool. What we can see though is a player with incredible pace and an enormous amount of energy, and that Liverpool will want cover that replicates that to a degree. And I don't think they think the ageing version of Andy Robertson could do that. And I doubt they think the ageing version of Kostas Tsimikas can do that. How do you think they move on from those two left-backs?
I don't think there are many left-backs are still as quick as Robertson. I think this is a missed thing. I think Robertson at times last season, especially going backwards, which was the odd thing, at times last season just didn't seem to entirely back himself. As much as anything else, he seemed to lack a bit of confidence. He was dropping a little bit, and that was more my concern. I still thought going forwards, and I don't think he always had the licence to go forwards at times, Robertson, with the way Liverpool set up with the full-backs last season as well. But I thought going forwards, Robertson still looked as able to contribute in attack as pretty much he ever has been. He has hard lines over the course of the season. I've done the numbers on it, and he only gets one assist, which is that goal for Gakpo late on in the campaign. But his expected assists is higher than Kerkez's, playing for different teams. But he's still basically, if you put good balls in and lads don't kick it into the goal,
what were they, like 5 or 6?
Expected assists about 3.7, 3.8, and Kerkez is about 3.2. But Kerkez gets 5 assists over the course of the season because some lads kicked it in the goal at the point where the ball came across. But I still, for me, the Robertson going forward bit, if that's the way we're using the left back, I think that would actually liberate Robertson a little bit. If the plan is to have as much pace and energy as humanly possible from both full-back positions, then I think if your fourth fastest and most energetic is Andy Robertson off what I saw last season, I'm absolutely fine with that. But more than absolutely fine with that, as I say. I think that there are quick left-backs in the league, but there aren't absolutely tons of them knocking around the place.
Do you think the club are convinced?
And, well, I don't know if the club are convinced, but what happened when the pressure was on last season is that Robertson got picked ahead of Tsimikas, and my biggest gripe all the way through watching Kostas Tsimikas from the minute he's joined pretty much has been he lacks pace.
Yeah,
he lacks pace. If Tsimikas was as quick as Robertson is now, then you'd be able to make a really strong argument that you go forward next season with Tsimikas. He just lacks pace. He always has lacked pace. It's one of the reasons it's frustrating watching him. It's one of the reasons why I think he struggled to get regular football prior to Schlott's arrival, when he had it the first part of the season just gone. Was because people would often pass the ball to where Robertson would be and the ball would go out for a throw, and Tsimikas would be looking at them like, well, I was never going to make that, mate, sorry. It was a genuine ongoing frustration. People play blind passes to Robertson's space, and as I say, if Tsimikas is being picked, he wouldn't get there. Listen, I'll always be very ride or die for Andy Robertson for a wide variety of reasons, but one is also historically I have despised almost every Liverpool left back.
You have?
And Andy Robertson cleansed me of my sins, and I am, I will be happy to move forward with him. I can imagine. I think Ian's, put the idea of his position really, really well. I could see if you are Robertson, and it's worth pointing out last season Atletico Madrid finished third in the league, and they get to the last 16 of the Champions League like Liverpool. They get beat on penalties like Liverpool. You could quite easily sell you could win a Champions League here, project to Andy Robertson. You can challenge for a league title here, project to Andy Robertson. As a starter. I just think it'd be a real shame. I think it'd be a massive shame, and I think it would undermine Liverpool going into next season. I think the idea of Kirkes, who is a long way away from the finished article, and I like him. I like Bournemouth. I like what he did for Bournemouth last season. I think he looks like he's got a lot of potential, but I think having someone like Robertson be able to fulfil a role like James Milner's. I take Ian's point before about James Milner, but James Milner managed to cope with not playing a lot of football, albeit with greater versatility than Andy Robertson would have for an extended period of time. I don't think it's a bad thing, and it may well be one where you maybe reassess it in January and go from there, or you maybe reassess it next summer and go from there. But I think it would be a shame if Robertson chose this moment to move on, because I still think he can pick up some medals next season and wear them with pride. And I think it would be a shame if Liverpool, I think it does offer complexity to what Liverpool are looking to do this summer, because it seemed pretty clear to everyone at the end of the season that it was Shimmercast. They were looking to move on. To do the same thing about body language around laps of honour and things in front of away crowds. It looked to me like it was Shimmercast who thought he was playing his last games for Liverpool. And I think it does put them in a little bit of a bind. I think they'll have planned to move forward with Robertson, and maybe there now needs to be a little bit of man management to ensure that they do so.
I think most Liverpool fans would like to see Andy give it one more year, but you could totally understand if he wants the security of a longer-term contract. But anyway, that's enough for part one. Part two in a minute, in a few minutes. But first we're going to hear from John Gibbons talking to Ian Byrne and Ian Prowse about Zoe's Place.
And it is John Gibbons. I'm delighted to be joined in our studio on a Monday morning by Ian's Byrne and Prowse, Ian Byrne MP and Ian Prowse, Merseyside rock and roll legend. Gentlemen, thanks so much for coming in.
Oh, no problem, John.
And to talk about something that's pretty exciting as well, there's a huge gig taking place July 17th in aid of what is currently now called Zoe's Place Liverpool, but it is going to change. But more on that in a minute. But just a little bit from you first, Ian, on the route to here, because anyone who's followed the Anfield Wrap and is connected to the city, doesn't even have to live here, knows the Zoe's Place story. But for the few who maybe won't, we were close to losing them, and the way that the city rallied round is something that I was going to say almost unprecedented, but it's in a way it's not, because it's what the city does. But to that level, to raise that much money in that amount of time, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it.
No, I think it'll go down the folklore. A month to pull it together and save the place from closing down, which, as you said, was just so much good, and so many people come together, like you two here and many others, and I think it was so humbling. And I think the idea behind the concept basically was there was an opportunity to have the arena, and we thought, well, we need to thank everybody, that did what they did. But also celebrate that unique sense of what we are and who we are and what we can do when we come together collectively. So I just think it's a celebration of Liverpool, really, and I think that's why you've got people like him playing, who's integral to what we are, the fabric of the city.
It was the city at its best, wasn't it, Prowse? And it feels like a long time ago now. It was only sort of last summer, but it was the city at its best. Really, it makes you proud to live here and be from here.
Yeah, absolutely. And our self-image took a little bit of a battering last summer with the riots and stuff going on. So I think something like this is really important, that we can say we are who we say we are, and that didn't represent us. So I can't wait. How exciting to sing on such a huge stage.
Well, you got in touch with a few people and said that you wanted to do it, and threw a few names out there, and it's funny seeing that message now that has been sort of leaked in a nice way by Danny Nicol, because you got most of what you wanted and more, and it's a fantastic lineup. Likes of Ian Prowse, Ian McCulloch, Zootown's Lightning Seas, Jamie Webster, Rebecca Ferguson, Centre Sound Choir, so many more as well. Yeah, they're all right. I messaged Prowse saying, do you need a trumpet player? And he said, I think we're all right, son.
So always you for you, John.
He did say that to me. But the Liverpool Philharmonic, I'll sit this play out. But yeah, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's something for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when we had the Germany idea, obviously you had the people who you'd want to represent the city and build it around that, and then like Dan Nicol and Mike, who've been absolutely instrumental in pulling it together. built on the Philharmonic Orchestra who just underpin everything. And it's got something for everyone. I think that's what's going to be, people are going to be in tears listening to him sing, his anthem with the Philharmonic. It's going to be, and it's going to be like that right through the day, isn't it? Right through the night. It's just going to be a fabulous experience. And, when a celebration of what we are. And, a lot of the songs are celebrations of the city, aren't they? And what we stand for.
Well, just the cast of musicians and songs that are going to get played with the Philharmonic Orchestra at your back. Yeah. I think there will be a lot of tears along through the night, and a lot of celebration.
Celebration, yeah.
Yeah, because it is a lot of work for new musicians to do stuff like this, isn't it? Because it's a lot shorter set than sort of what you used to. People come and see us at Christmas, you get an hour and a half, 2 hours. But this one, it is sort of shorter set, so people probably think, just rock up and do it. But because you're playing with the Phil, because it's a different thing, there will be a lot of work go into each individual set. But you do it for love to a Prowsey tune, and you do it because you love the city.
Well, also, you're singing in front of a lot of your peers and a lot of other great
musicians. Got to be good.
So you've got to be, you can't mess around. You can't just phone it in. And I'm competitive by nature, so I'm just going to be as best as I possibly can. And so you do have that. Some of those people who are playing are your heroes. So it's just for me, the Philharmonic thing is the extra bit of icing on the cake. Yeah. I mean, how many's in it? About 40? Yeah. 40 musicians. Big double basses and string sections and timpani and all of that. I said to the Phil, we've been talking about how they're going to do my song. And I said, just throw the kitchen sink at it. None of this, a nice, tasteful touch.
We want people to know you're there. You're coming.
None of this nice, tasteful touch of strings near the end, as the song builds up. Come in full at the start and still be going at the end.
Yeah, go big and get big. It's going to be a fantastic night. And like you say, Ian, you want to do it, and everyone wants to do it to say thank you, to remind people about the power of coming together. Yeah. But it is also a key time for the charity as well, because there's a competition at the moment for a new name, because Zoe's Place Liverpool is stepping out on its own, and that was part of this process of saving it, was this realisation that actually this charity needs to have its own trustees, its own people sort of running it, and so it is going out on its own. So it's letting people know about that, and also, to be frank, letting people know that it still needs support, because I think a lot of people would see how much money that Zoe's Place got and think, they'll be fine for ages now, but that was for a new home. No, it's still got all the running costs, and it still needs a lot of support day to day to do the service that they do. Yeah,
and a key part of the concert is like the renaming elements of it, and we wanted, when you seen like the pictures in the Echo with the kids outside doing collecting outside the Iceland, and it's just the whole city come together, and we're thinking, now this is your children's hospice, now you've saved it, now we want you to be a part of rebranding it, renaming it. And that's genuinely exciting. Matt Morris from Owen Bargain's been fantastic. He's a trustee. He's involved heavily in this side of it. So that's a brilliant, like you say, cherry on the cake. That will be the renaming element of it. We'll launch the brand that night. We'll let people know what the new name's going to be. And as you said, John, the campaign to keep it open was to raise the money to build a new building. So we've got the land now. We created a new board of trustees. We've actually brought all the staff over to Zoe's Liverpool. So this is part of the journey. So in the next 18 months, we're going to get a new building up. But this is kick-starting it now. So it's July the 17th. July the 17th. Tickets available now. You've kept them quite decent prices. So the sounds, the £30 for adults, £15 for children. So we want to make sure that it's an event where you can bring your kids, because Zoe's Place effort was from kids to pensioners, wasn't it? It was multi-generational. So it's really important that night is for everybody that wants to be able to attend. Yeah, so it's for everyone, and it should be spectacular. And I know you have done stuff sort of there before, there's various things. You're doing it because for the city, but it will be a massive thrill for all the musicians to get on stage that night as well. I think so, yeah. And you're going to hear some of the very, very best songs that this city has ever put out. They're all going to be there being played with the orchestra by the artists who've written them. So you couldn't get a more stellar
lineup than this. You know,
it's quite historic, isn't it? But also, I want to challenge your premise. And I was with Springsteen on Saturday. I see speaking. When you said it was the greatest concert Liverpool's ever seen.
Yes.
This is going to beat it. Well, up until the 17th of July.
Just while we got you in, you've been busy, you've been here, there and everywhere yourself in between Springsteen concerts, doing tours, have since sold out shows up and down the country, and you're having another good year.
I never stop, I'm having a great year. We just finished the tour now, and then we've just started recording a brand new record as well. Mm-hmm. So that's all, it's all good. But I look up to people like Ian because I write songs and talk about it from the sidelines and can say what I want. But these are the people who really get things done. I just sing and try and be a bit of an activist about it. But it's people like him who actually do the hard work and bring things into real life, like Zoe's Place and everything. So my hat off to them all who do that.
Yeah, and may that continue. Get tickets, come along, July the 17th. It's going to be a fantastic night. I've got my tickets. Yes, this is my nudge to bring the family down as well.
Sorry, you won't have your trumpet with you.
It's all right. It's okay. No worries. There'll be good musicians there on the night. Proper ones, classically trained, phenomenal stuff supporting. And if you want to come and see it out, piss it. That's Christmas. Come and see me at O2 Academy. But no, it is going to be absolutely brilliant. If you want to get involved in the renaming of Zoe's Place, all the information is online about that at the moment. Loads of information at Merseyrail stations and things like that. If you've got an idea of what Zoe's Place Liverpool should be called moving forward, then you've got the opportunity to do that. And they do always want your support. There's loads of stuff going on. There's boat races and things like that. There's Zoe's Place to do, so have a look on it online. If you can't make the concert for whatever reason, but you do want to support them, they will be very grateful for it. Gents, thanks so much for coming in on a Monday morning.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks to John and the Ians. I want to talk in part 2 about Liverpool's front three. I feel like we're endlessly going to be talking about Liverpool's front three this summer. The striker situation. Post Florian Wirtz, we're already moving on, Beth, from Florian Wirtz. We now know we need a striker at number 9. Look, I just want to read some stuff that's been breaking in the football media this week. Lewis Steele at the Mail says, the noise I keep getting is that Liverpool are not done this transfer window and they will go for a number 9. Ian Doyle of the Echo says Liverpool are huge admirer of Newcastle United's Alexander Isak and are keeping tabs on the situation of Ugo Ekitike and Eintracht Frankfurt. Fabrizio Romano says Alexander Isak has been Liverpool's dream target since day one, but it remains complicated. Now, I want to start with Isak because I'm fascinated but trying not to let myself get excited on this one. Since we started talking about the inevitability of Darwin Núñez moving on, I think halfway through last season, approximately, I think the name on everyone's lips in terms of who we would want to replace him was Alexander Isak. He was getting better and better as the season went by. The only doubt about him was his prior fitness record, but he was continuing to be regularly available for Newcastle. He had a stellar season, backing up a really good season from the year before. So he's target number 1. We could all guess at that in anyone's estimation. Figures to extract him from Newcastle being talked around the £130 million mark, huge numbers. But then the conversation moved towards whether Newcastle actually felt any compunction to let him go at all. They qualified for the Champions League, and I think most assumptions were that at that point they could more or less say to the player, you're giving us at least another year. Look, we've delivered Champions League football. I mean, he's under contract anyway. But the noise, the mood music around him and LFC, it won't quieten. It just won't go away entirely. I can't help feeling there might be a delicious sting in this tale. What's your reading of it?
My reading of it is, I mean, it's not great sort of a revelation, but Liverpool are very keen on him. Arne Slot is very keen on him, but pretty much every top club in Europe is probably keen on him, and the manager is as well. So it is very much about Newcastle's willingness to do a deal. I think it would have been a deal that would have been much likelier had Newcastle not qualified for the Champions League. I think the fact that they have, maybe makes his willingness to stay there a little bit more. However, he's got how many years left on his contract? 3. So I think he will want to move on from Newcastle, if not this summer, then next summer. And that I'm saying that with the greatest of respect. And I know Newcastle obviously financially in a position where they can, assemble a squad over the next couple of seasons that is capable of challenging for top honours. And I might be proved wrong, but I do think Isak will view himself as a player who should be winning the big prizes, and to do that he's probably going to have to move. So I think a lot of it will come down to the player himself and whether he really is keen on moving this summer, whether he's happy to wait it out. It is hard. I completely agree with Lewis. I think it's hard to visualise when you look back at Liverpool's previous transfer strategy, them spending upwards of 100 million on another attack-minded player, having signed Wirtz. However, a lot of the noise coming out of the club when they did sign Wirtz was making the point of Liverpool were only able to do that because the transfer strategy over the past couple of seasons has very much been about waiting for the right people to become available. They obviously only spend 12 million last summer on Federico Chiesa, and that is what I thought gave them the wiggle room to be able to do this summer. So I think Liverpool probably do have the funds if, and it's a big if, Newcastle will be open to doing a deal and Isak himself were willing to try and push that through. I can't see Liverpool spending, if they don't get Isak, spending big money on a striker who they're not 100% confident on, because that isn't the Liverpool strategy. I think it's only if they feel there is a real viable option elsewhere. Ekitike is obviously the name that has been linked a lot. Home hands up, I haven't watched an awful lot of him, seen bits and bobs. To me, he doesn't look like a player worth the money that Frankfurt, we know, are very, very good at getting what they want in terms of transfer fees. So unless Liverpool are 100% confident, I could see, and I would also sort of back up going into the season without signing someone if they don't feel like the right person is available. But they do need a number 9. So it's interesting. I wouldn't be surprised now. I think we've said this a few times on shows, whether there is a little bit of a lull after Wirtz and Kerkez where they wait and see how the situation unfolds, how the market moves, and maybe there's more action later in the window. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I think a lot depends on the player and how eager he is to leave Newcastle this summer.
I'm fascinated with what will happen with Isak. As I said before, I can't quite see it being as simple as he's too rich for everyone's blood this summer. It's probably likely that he is, but I can't see it as being a definite. And from Liverpool's point of view, yes, they're sometimes happier to do no business than the wrong business. Well, they're very often happy to do that, but they'll feel very definitely that they will want to move on Darwin Núñez, not just, oh, well, we couldn't get a striker we wanted, we'll go with Darwin Núñez and maybe even Diogo Jota again. They'll want to sort this problem out. The fact that they've moved so decisively for Wirtz and Frimpong and surprised the footballing world really with the Wirtz capture says to me that they're almost not leaving no stone unturned, but they are the Liverpool mean business in how they intend to complete a body of transfer work this summer. They will want to buy a number 9. Now, to go to one of Beth's points, this is where it gets complex. I just can't see them compromising. Even if Ekitike is expensive or its price drops by 10 million and he's gettable for 65 million plus add-ons, I can't see them necessarily pulling that trigger when they think by next year Isak's gettable for a more reasonable fee and actually gettable. I can see them wanting to not quite go to the wire, but really, really push at Newcastle this summer on Isak. I mean, it does depend how much they'd pay, but I think they'd want to fight and fight. The one thing they have in their corner, I'd say, apart from hopefully money to burn, as we believe, is Newcastle, as with Anthony Gordon, were prepared to make Isak a pawn in their PSR game, if you want to call it that, last summer. When they faced issues with PSR, they hawked around those 2 players. Now, they pulled back from it and sold other squad players and were able to sort of pretend they hadn't been so, what's the word, frivolous with those boys' futures as they in fact might have been. And that perhaps gives a bit of a moral argument to those players, and Isak in this case especially.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult to kind of say sitting here right now what will happen with Isak, but I think my instinct would suggest that he maybe just gives it one more year. I think the sell from Newcastle is, listen, you've won a trophy with us. We're in the Champions League now. Just give us that next 12 months and then we'll reevaluate it. That potentially is the case, but if someone just comes in with a really, really strong bid, maybe it just, gets a bit too much and they go, you know what, to sell him would allow us to go and do a little bit more in terms of, reinforcing other areas of the team. So that is possible, but I think they'll do everything to keep him. I think from a Liverpool point of view, again, sitting here right now, it feels difficult to make a case for them doing two lads in the one summer for over 100 million. But listen, I've been surprised before, so you can never rule these things out. I think the only way I would ever really see it happening is they move Darwin Núñez on, which almost feels inevitable, but then maybe one of the left-hand side attackers leaves as well. So if all of a sudden a really, really strong bid came in for a Gakpo or a Diaz and they felt it was too good to turn down, then I could see them entering the market in a really, really big way for the forward. I don't think that's out of the realms of possibility, to be honest. I don't think they're looking to, again, push either Gakpo or Diaz out the door. I think they like them both. And I think they'll happily kind of ride with the pair of them again going into next season. But I don't think those players are off the table in terms of if someone comes in with a really, really strong bid, especially someone like Diaz, who is at an age now where you're thinking, he is 28, he's by no means over the hill, but they're not going to give him a new deal by all accounts. I think if someone came in, north of 70 for him, for instance, Liverpool would seriously consider it. But I'm broadly happy with the options. I do feel like you do need another one up top. I think the conversation around Wirtz has been really, really interesting, I think, in terms of what Liverpool might do next season. There's talk of, will they play two 10s, not too dissimilar to what they did against Manchester City. I think they do a little bit of that against Villa as well, if I remember rightly. Yeah. But that was very game specific, I felt at the time. Will they want to operate with that kind of system and formation against, teams who are going to, maybe come and play a low block at Anfield? I'm not too sure. Listen, it may well work more often than not. But I think also a lot of people have said the beauty of Wirtz is when he's got someone in front of him, he's almost unstoppable. Now, he can operate in that false nine position where he is beating men and obviously opening up space himself, and then, he's obviously executing the finish. You've seen lots of that already in the clips. But I do think there's something about just having someone in front of him where for certain games you'll want that. Now, Liverpool may say, listen, we're happy to just ride with what we've got. I wasn't particularly impressed with most of what we've seen from Jota last season. They may feel with the pre-season they can get a tune out of him, but the problem is you're always thinking there's an injury around the corner with him, and that's something you just can't get away from. And again, if a bid came in, they may well consider it. There's still Chiesa there, but you'd expect him to go. So I'll be slightly concerned if they don't get someone in that number 9 position, but I'm not sure Liverpool will be that panicked. I think they will just by the time. I suspect that if they don't get who they want, they may just say, you know what, we'll make do. We've still got the best attacker in the league in Mohamed Salah, and he's the top goal scorer as well. So we don't need to panic too much. And Diaz and Gakpo both got close to 20 goals all comp. So and Wirtz will chip in with probably double figures. So I don't think there's a case here of them going, oh my God, all of a sudden we don't get a number now, we'll have to push the button on someone. I don't think they'll do that. But it would be interesting if all of a sudden Newcastle give them a bit of a whiff that if the money got to a certain point, they will consider selling Isak.
Okay, so Neil, let's workshop this in terms of plan A, B and C. Plan A, I think, in an ideal world is Liverpool get the number 9 in and get him at a price that they can justify. Whether it's Isak at a fee that Newcastle will be more reasonable about, let's call that the plan A in a hypothetical sense, or plan B is another striker, or plan C is wait for an Isak and play without a striker, as Ian suggests. I mean, Liverpool have form for patience and appearing maybe to some people to cutting their nose to spite their face, like as we in the year where we waited on Konate and suffered for lack of centre-backs. Can you see, having invested in Wirtz, and the perception, as Ian's elucidated there, about Wirtz is great with a forward running. Well, I know you'll see Salah's a forward running ahead, but with specifically a more orthodox 9 running ahead of him, that they will go into the season having sold an orthodox of sorts 9 in Núñez and just leave themselves with Jota or potentially no number 9 at all. I suppose I'm asking, do you think they'll do even a make weight number 9 in the transfer market if they have to?
I think they'll do an unorthodox number 9. And I think that if you look at the entirety of the history of the recruitment since Michael Edwards got in, I don't think he's ever willingly bought at number 9. And I think this is why I think if Liverpool could get Isak, could get literally the best one, who you're able to also look at and see that, for instance, whilst his grafting isn't, it's not an outrageous level like Jota, but he does work out of possession. You're able to see that when he plays for Newcastle. You're able to see that he's built relationships. Like he actually plays with Gordon. I think is a bit of a front two with Murphy joining from the right. I think that's how they do it a little bit more like that when you look at average positions. So you can see that he can build relationships. He's decent with the ball at his feet in terms of setting up others.
He can pull wide, Isak.
He can pull wide. I feel as though they may well have their eye on Isak is the one that we want for these reasons, because we view him as an all-round exceptional footballer who also happens to be a number 9, and that's what we want. I think that they will always err on the side of the exceptional footballer ahead of the cliched footballer who puts a number 9 on his back. And I've thought this all the way through the summer, so I expect Liverpool to buy someone this summer who, in the short term at least, they envisage playing through the middle as the central forward. But I still, no matter how much the reports come in, I'm sceptical. It's the idea of how we would draw a number 9 at all costs. I'm sceptical on Ekitike, and the reason why I'm sceptical on him is because he's only really got one season at the very highest level producing the goods, and Liverpool normally don't like that sort of thing. He has got 150 odd appearances, it's worth saying, and Liverpool like them. Neil Jones used to always say it felt like there was some sort of magic number around 170, 180, but he's got 150.
I think Klopp almost confirmed that.
To be fair, yeah, it sort of came through that there's a bit of a sweet spot that they wanted, but there is only one season of genuine excellence in amongst those 150 appearances. There's a good season playing for a side lower down the league in France. I've forgotten that's the one.
PSG signed him from Reims, didn't they?
Yeah, and then it doesn't work for him at PSG, but then that feels all quite Liverpool. But I just sort of think that they might want one more year of him showing what he is, and then feel as though it's worth putting what would be a significant sum down. I think Liverpool want Isak, and I think Liverpool will have backup plans as to what they're going to do, both practically and tactically, if they can't get Isak. And I think that's Liverpool will hang on until, if there is an Isak situation, and there may be one or there may not be one, it clears itself one way or the other. I'm just also of the view, Newcastle got one job next season. I keep coming back to it. In terms of the whole project, in terms of what's bought into them, and everyone who listens to this should know I do not approve of states buying football clubs. It should not be allowed. But if there's one thing Newcastle have needed and need in order to be able to maximise this unbelievable advantage they have, it's back-to-back Champions League qualification. That's it. If you're Newcastle, that's your job next season, is get in the Champions League again, because 1, you keep a place away from somebody else. 2, you're able to say it's the continent's best talent, we're here to stay. 3, you're then able to extrapolate more money because of the way the PSR works than just the money that you're earning. And I think in a universe where that's your main aim, selling your sure thing number 9 is just a huge thing to do, and I think it would take a lot of money in order to make you feel as though that was worthwhile. They are going for João Pedro, but they feel as though they can use him, and they will need they need attacking bodies, Newcastle, because they're going to end up playing on 2 fronts. And they'll probably also want to, off the experience of last season, do well in the domestic cups, or at least try to do well in the domestic cups as well, because it matters to the fans. So all in, I do struggle to see it, but I think what a lot of this is for both Ekitike and for Isak is, I think it's Liverpool being genuinely interested and wanting to keep abreast of things, but off the basis of they think that they may well do it next summer.
Well,
and if they do something more unorthodox this summer, where they buy a wide player who would naturally pull left or right in an ideal world. We think Diaz is going to probably move on next summer or the summer after. We think Salah's going to move on in 2 summers' times, because that's when his contract is up. So you've got room. If you've got someone who you look at and think, well, he can do that and play, and he could be a really good option for us at number 9, there's a long-term pathway where that player is still going to be part of your plan once you buy a central striker.
Well, let me put it to you. There is a name, Liverpool's compromised position, a player who could have moved to Liverpool last summer, and I think we all said by next summer we'll definitely get him. And I actually think this is a potential live one if Isak isn't extricatable from Newcastle. Whilst talking to Newcastle about Isak, I think they'll say, okay, then give us Anthony Gordon, Anthony H. Gordon. Give us him, because he can play everywhere. And he gives us the headroom to then go at Isak the summer after.
It's possible. And he played up front for England under 21s when they won that tournament. I think he could work really well as a central striker, as long as you accept that he's not gonna be winning your headers. You know, he's not gonna be doing flick-ons. You accept that. You know, the thing about Gordon is he's got unbelievable pace. He presses brilliantly, and he's shown he can finish on a big occasion.
But he'll run in behind.
And he'll run in behind. But it's also worth pointing out he has a really flat year last year, and you can wonder if it's because of the summer. But it's just also worth saying that sometimes, you know, progress isn't linear. But it might also be worth saying that maybe he flattered to deceive before then.
6 league goals last year.
That's what I mean. But at least one of them was against us. He scores against. I think one of them was against us. I think he's great against Arsenal on a couple of. You know, it's this madness of. I think there's a couple of players who are like that in the league, and I like them, but I tend to only see them when they play against the big sides. I don't see them when they play against other people as much.
I think Kudos is like that, who you've mentioned a lot. I think he often. Why someone like that always, I say worries me. I think he's clearly capable of going to any ground in the country and being the best player on the pitch, but it feels like he turns up for the big games, and I don't like that about players where, you know, what are they doing against kind of, you know, the middle of the road teams week in, week out, but when they're on telly against Liverpool or Arsenal, they show up.
But I always have a flip side of that, though, is I feel a little bit like, but when you play for Liverpool, though, they're all big games, mate. And he's a good
player, by the way.
And that can go not just with him, but I think with a number of players that can go either way. That was always one of the things with Sadio Mane. You know, there was a lot of Southampton supporters saying he's streaky and he's inconsistent and he's this and he's often disinterested. And then we bought him, and I've never seen anyone look more interested. It's worth saying. But so you don't know. But these players that you name, and I think I'm not saying Liverpool will end up with that player. You know, because it could be someone abroad, it could be, but I think it might end up with someone of that flavour, and then we see it in pre-season. It's like, oh, he's just playing him through the middle. And that wouldn't surprise me, and also it's what PSG were doing. But I could be completely wrong, and Liverpool might go and buy Osimhen if they can't get Isak. And I wouldn't be... Osimhen would be the one I would go for if they can't get Isak, I'll be dead honest.
I mean, he's clearly a player, but, you know, Neil mentions PSG, they go in the Champions League without a recognised proper centre-forward. You know, Liverpool win the league without a recognised proper centre-forward for a large part of the season. There's a lot of talk about Arsenal not having a centre-forward. Liverpool don't play with a centre-forward for the majority of last season. You know, Luis Diaz is doing loads of stuff through the middle. I know Jota has minutes there and gets games there.
City play their best football with that one.
Yeah, so
City finished the season strong and they haven't got one.
It's not like, you know, you're suddenly banging trouble if you don't have one. I think Liverpool ideally would like to get one over the line, but I don't think, you know, your point before, Rob, I don't think they're going to compromise themselves too much if they can't get one of the top 2 or 3 that are on a list. So what would you look at someone like a Gordon, for instance? Would you do that, would you?
Yeah, I think that just pulling it back a bit, as to whether they need or want a specific number 9, what I think they will have concluded, the manager and the team behind him, is that Chiesa's race is probably run, Nunez's race is run, and Jota is in reverse, as we've seen. So there's 3 who could be going out the door. Well, there's a case for 3 going out the door. Luis Diaz, they're not going to renew a contract, so if a big enough offer comes in, even though they might want him to stay another year, they have to take it. There's possibly 4 of last season's front 6 going out the door. Not so they all will. You've got to buy someone. You've got to add attacking bodies. So what do I think they do? I think Anthony Gordon, I have the same reservations. I kind of sort of covering my eyes when looking at his numbers last year and thinking about them the year before. I've always thought he's a talented player. I watched him at Everton and thinking, bloody hell, they've got a talent on their hands here, because I thought he was the proverbial pressing monster from the front, which I thought was still relatively rare in the game to be that committed to that kind of process as an attacking player. So I rate Anthony Gordon. I think he'd be a really, really good option for us. Kudus, I'm not quite sure of, but I can see how there's a similar approach there. I think I'd like to think Liverpool could get the money. Do
you think it's interesting they're not looking at João Pedro?
I think he might be a bell end.
I think the issues of João Pedro, his numbers, if you take away his penalties, are not good for a central striker. His injury record worries me in terms of João Pedro. I think if you could get him for 40 million, maybe. Well, Brighton drive a hard bargain.
Talking 60, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's...
So,
well, the thing you've got to look at as well is, you know, I think you can look at someone like Gordon. I'm not completely sold on him now. I was maybe more... I wouldn't say convinced last summer, but I could certainly see why they might be looking at Gordon. And you look at maybe Diaz last year and you think, his output's not quite where you want it to be. But obviously, a new manager comes in. That was always my thing. You know, we never know what it looks like when a new manager comes in. Slot gets older Diaz, all of a sudden he has his best season. You know, Gakpo has his best season. There's a lot of Liverpool players having their best seasons under this current manager. So it's really clear to me that we've got a supreme coach who is capable of getting another 5 or 10% out of footballers by making really smart tactical tweaks, and maybe there is someone out there who we're not really thinking of, where the manager's going, if I had hold of him, I could get far more out of him than what you've seen at his current club. So I think it's really interesting where they land.
I think Liverpool is quite unique in the sense that they're wide players. As Ian said, excuse me, coming into this season, there was a lot of talk about Diaz not being prolific, and he's still not super prolific. But for a wide player, his numbers are brilliant. This season are brilliant. Cody Gakpo, the same boat. Obviously, Mo Salah is his own animal, but. I think you look at other clubs, the likes of, Arsenal, for example, Bukayo Saka is their main man. And I know, obviously, he spent a significant chunk of the season out injured, but his numbers, even his numbers the season before, Liverpool's wide players make it so that they don't need a prolific number 9. Does that mean that they don't want one or they wouldn't be better with one? No, I'm sure that Arne Slot would love his centre-forward to be scoring 20 goals a season, but I think that they're in a fortunate position where the wide players are able to contribute much more than a lot of top European clubs.
What Liverpool need is they need to have a central forward, and that's not the same as an old style centre forward or a striker, but they need to have a central forward who, when they're playing in the quarter-final of the Champions League, the opposition really need a plan to deal with that central forward. And I feel as though last season, I feel as though, and this is why I still have more than a lot of other people, I would not think it was the end. If it wasn't for how much it just do my head and how much it did everyone else's head in, and they chose to keep Nunez, I wouldn't think it was mad, because you need to have a Nunez plan if you're going to play against him, because the sheer package is so much. But to Ian's point before, where the manager's got more out of players, I'd argue he ended up getting less out of Nunez as the season wore on. And I think Nunez should go. This is not me making the point, but my issue with watching the version of Jota we ended up with last season, and it might be that with some time to rest and recover, I think the injury was so bad, and I think it wasn't rightly by Liverpool put out how bad it was, but I think it was so bad, the injury. But I don't think I think Jota could score against anyone. He could score in any game against anyone, but I don't think you need a Jota plan. You just need to be aware he could score. I think, you think about, for instance, Dembele, you go sort of down that list, and I'd even argue to an extent Havertz, and again, Havertz is not fashionable, but Havertz does your head in, plays in horrible areas, is 6'4", is capable of scoring a goal, has scored literally the winner in a Champions League final, has got really good movement. I think that Liverpool need to have a player who's going to play through the middle, who, if you're the opposition and it's a Champions League quarter-final, you're going, well, I'm worried about Wirtz, I'm worried about Salah. That Luis Diaz off the left, he looks absolutely lively. What are we going to do with this fella? Yeah.
I think one of the few mistakes that Arne Slot made last season was starting Jota in both of those legs against PSG. And again, it's sort of, you look back at Nunez's body of work over the course of the season and you think, well, what did he do to justify starting? But I just think even, in the away leg when Nunez came on, I think he gets the assist, does he, for Harvey Elliott? But just the sort of 5-10 minutes that he was on the pitch, Liverpool suddenly looked like they had something about them. And I think, there was a little bit of surprise when the team came out the following week and Jota was starting again. And listen, Jota has contributed massively during his time at the club and still, I think, could have a role to play. But I completely agree with Neil. I think that there is a universe where sometimes Nunez, just by virtue of being the slightly insane person and player that he
quick
is,
and 6'3",
yeah, it makes life a little bit difficult. I mean, you look at Chris Wood, for example. How many goals did he get last season? And I think maybe sometimes we look down a bit on Chris Wood, and actually he's probably better than the press that he gets. But again, his physicality and I think it doesn't hurt to have a player who is, like Neil said, a bit of a handful.
Last word for you, Ian. This is a rogue question, but I've been tempted into it. Darwin Núñez. Darwin Núñez. Is there, if they couldn't get, if the bids just don't come in that suits the player and the club, is there a chance that they talk themselves into giving one more year and thinking, do you know what? Florian Wirtz slipping some balls in behind, he'd get more chances to miss.
Listen, I mean, there's a world where you could put a fairly average centre forward in front of Wirtz and he'll still end up getting 15 goals because Wirtz's supply will be that good. I just think the Darwin Núñez experiment now is well and truly over. And I take Neil's point, he didn't get more out of him. I mean, he's a football manager and a fucking miracle worker. I mean, to be fair, the manager got more out of most players. Darwin Núñez does not help himself. He just doesn't. And he plays with, at times, so little intelligence. And I know some people won't like that, but he's burnt my head out for a long time. And I was very much a backer of his when he first arrived. As you should be, pull on the Liverpool shirt, all that. And when you're in the ground, you back him and stuff. But it just feels really hard to make a case for him staying around now. And I don't think the manager particularly trusts him. He gets 5 goals last season, 30 appearances. There's some big moments in there, of course, but I think that experiment's well.
Is he better than
over.
having no one, though? What I'm saying, and I'm not being glib. Because,
no, I know what you mean.
We could say, hey, we'll get Isak next year. So say you think you've got a strong chance of getting Isak next year, so you don't go heavy on a striker in terms of investment this summer. Do you then stop yourself selling Darwin Núñez?
The thing is, though, Rob, what does he want as a player? I think if you sit him down, I think he'd want a new challenge, and he probably needs that, to be honest. I think it's just one of those things where it could have worked, but it hasn't. I suspect he's probably knocking on Liverpool's door now and saying, listen, if a decent bid comes in, you've got to consider it.
I think he wants to be the main man, Núñez. And he needs to go somewhere where he's the main man. There's a system that's built to his strengths where he can go from there. I don't think that's at Liverpool at this point. And I think he needs to go somewhere where he doesn't necessarily need to be the absolute the centre of the universe, but I think he needs to be key to the tactical plan.
And it might work for him somewhere else.
I think it would. I think there's a number of places where he could go and really excel and do excellently and spearhead something for those clubs and those teams. I think what's hard at Liverpool is that that's not going to happen, but this throws us back into the overall buying a centre forward, buying a number 9 question. Is part of the reason why you need to go and get the best one is because he needs to be able to work with everything else, and then if you want the best one, it's because you want him then to showcase the reasons why he's the best one. I think part of why I keep ending up back with they may well get a forward who plays through the centre is because the player that they get might end up being someone who, at least in the short term, is able to facilitate the fact that they've got the best right winger on the planet, and we think we're buying the best number 10 on the planet, and that the player who comes in may well be their job, to Beth's point, may well be. It's absolutely fine if you only bang in 15 over the course of the season, as long as that fella to your right is getting 25, that fella behind just getting 15 minimum, the fella to your left, between the two of them, if they're occupying the role, they're getting the other side of 25 as well, spread over the course of the season. That's your role. Your role is to do that. Your role is to be part of all of this. And that's why I think if they can't get the best one, or the player they think can go on and become the best one, if that is indeed Atkinson. I keep saying it wrong in the first go and then getting it right the second go. If that is indeed Big Hugo, then absolutely fine, go with it. But I think that the overall plan is, I think that at least, and this the unspoken thing with all of this, when you get to the end of this, is they gave Salah the money. They gave Salah the money, and in the act of giving Salah the money, they expect Salah to produce the output. Because if they didn't think that Salah was going to produce the output, they wouldn't give him the money. And if they've given him the money and they expect him to produce the output, then the platform will be for Salah to produce the output because they gave him the money.
I think Liverpool's quest for a number 9 is a riddle wrapped within an enigma, and we're going to speculate wildly and endlessly and in a granular way about it all summer long, especially on the award-winning Gutter Show Behind the Paywall. But that's enough of your tasting for now, your free taster for now. Thank you very much to Neil, who will be back in the seat resuming normal service next week. Thank you to Ian, thank you to Beth, thank you for Andy for doing the sound, and Jordan for doing the pictures.